80% of our daily emotional energy is wasted on just 20% of the people around us. Why do we willingly hand over the keys to our inner peace to those who do not even care about our existence? Have you ever noticed how a single caustic remark from a complete stranger can ruin an entire weekend with the people you love? Last Monday morning started perfectly for me, until a brief and needlessly sharp email from a colleague arrived in my inbox. Instantly, my heart raced, and that minor friction became the invisible cloud hanging over my entire day, draining my focus and stealing my joy. I found myself trapped in an internal argument, rehearsing all the clever and cutting responses I could send back to defend my dignity. But then a quiet realization hit me, a thought that challenged my defensive pride. If I remain silent, am I just being a coward who allows others to walk all over me? Does loving our enemies mean we must transform our souls into a doormat for toxic behavior? The truth is, we often mistake frantic emotional reaction for strength. We spend our days like an exhausted sentry, furiously firing at shadows beyond the fence, while the real thief, bitterness, slips through the back door and plunders our inner sanctuary. For years I believed that being a good Christian meant accepting every insult with a hollow smile and letting toxic people walk over my boundaries. I convinced myself that total submission was the only way to demonstrate the meekness of Christ. But this passive compliance is not spiritual maturity. It is actually a subtle cowardice masquerading as holiness. True biblical meekness is not a lack of power. It is power completely under control. When we examine the gospel narrative, we see Jesus standing before Pontius Pilate, facing false accusations that could end his life. He possessed the supernatural authority to call down legions of angels, yet he chose absolute silence. That quietness was not weakness. It was the ultimate demonstration of an unshakable inner kingdom. I had to ask myself if my frequent silence in the face of disrespect was born out of deep faith, or simply a fear of confrontation. We often avoid setting healthy boundaries because we are terrified of losing the approval of difficult people. But spiritually grounded believers understand that they do not need to attend every argument to which they are invited. They protect their peace because their emotional energy is a sacred resource reserved for God and His purposes, not a playground for toxic behavior. When someone attacks your character or treats you with unprovoked cruelty, your immediate human instinct is to take it entirely personally. We wrap our identities around their harsh words and allow their poison to dictate our self-worth for days. But spiritually mature individuals operate with a different psychological clarity, recognizing that the hostility of others is rarely about you at all. If a person carries a bucket filled to the brim with muddy water, they will inevitably spill mud on anyone who stands too close when they stumbled. The mud reflects the chaotic content of their own vessel, not the cleanliness of your clothes. I remember struggling for months to forgive a bitter relative who continuously weaponized personal family gatherings with passive-aggressive remarks. I spent sleepless nights wondering what I had done to deserve such intense animosity, dissecting my past actions to find a reason. But then I looked closer at her life, seeing the profound isolation, the heavy financial anxieties, and the deep-seated fears she had carried for decades. My anger dissolved, not because her behavior was suddenly acceptable, but because I realized I was merely a convenient screen for her to project her internal torment. The scripture notes that the mouth speaks what the heart is full of, proving that an aggressive tongue is always the symptom of a deeply bleeding heart. When you shift your perspective from feeling targeted to observing human brokenness, the sting of the insult vanishes entirely. You no longer demand to know how they could dare to treat you poorly. Instead, you quietly recognize that something inside them is profoundly fractured. Most human anger does not explode instantly out of nowhere. It is carefully cultivated through repeated and hyper-focused thoughts. We replay the bitter insult over and over, rehearsing the argument, magnifying the disrespect, until a small spark becomes a roaring emotional fire. The ancient scriptures offer a profound architectural blueprint for mental defense, instructing us to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. Your mind functions exactly like a private garden, and whatever thought you choose to water will inevitably grow and dominate the landscape. If you constantly feed angry thoughts and plot your retaliation, a thick forest of bitterness will choke your potential. I used to think that achieving spiritual peace meant successfully controlling my environment and forcing difficult people to change their behavior. But this is a modern illusion, because true biblical peace comes entirely from learning to master your inner world. Of course, that sounds incredibly easy in theory, but when someone deeply slanders your name, your brain immediately enters a primal fight or flight survival mode. You feel an overwhelming urge to fire back instantly to protect your pride. To overcome this chemical trap, I developed a mandatory 3-second holy pause before allowing my mouth to open. This brief window allows you to filter the garbage of the world through the virtues of things that are true, noble, pure, and admirable. One calm and calculated response can permanently deactivate an entire generational conflict. If you can feel your mind becoming a stronger fortress right now, take a single second to click the like button and subscribe to our channel for more deep biblical wisdom. Please take a moment to write, "Lord, teach me to protect my peace," in the comment section below to declare your emotional freedom today. And if you want a practical tool to ground your heart every single morning, the link to my 30 Days of Growth devotional journal is waiting for you in the description. Let us remember that a person who cannot rule their own spirit is like a defenseless city with broken walls, completely at the mercy of every passing critic. When you learn to control your inner sanctuary, you strip difficult people of their power to disturb your destiny. We often view biblical forgiveness as a heavy moral obligation, a painful chore where we are forced to tell someone that their cruel behavior was acceptable. But this traditional perspective completely misunderstanding the spiritual economics of the gospel. Forgiveness is not about vindicating your abuser. It is a high-return investment in your own emotional and spiritual wealth. When you refuse to forgive, you are essentially drinking poison and desperately hoping that the other person will suffer from the toxicity. I spent 2 long years harboring intense bitterness toward a former business partner who actively sabotaged a project we built from scratch. He was moving on with his life, enjoying his success and sleeping soundly every night, while I was destroying my own health, rehearsing my resentment in the dark. I constantly asked myself if letting go meant I was letting him win, or if my anger was the only thing keeping justice alive. But I finally realized that my unresolved hatred was not punishing him at all. It was only charging me an exorbitant daily rent for space in my own soul. The moment you choose to release that debt, you are not declaring that their sin was right. You are simply decided that your energy is far too valuable to be wasted on a ghost from your past. You close the ledger, liquidate the emotional deficit, and reallocate your finite focus toward the divine destiny God has placed right in front of you. At the absolute deepest level, our chronic irritability and fragile emotional boundaries are merely symptoms of an empty spirit. When we are spiritually exhausted and detached from our divine source, every minor offense feels like an unbearable existential threat. The ancient texts remind us that perfect peace belongs exclusively to those whose minds are steadfastly anchored in God. This supernatural peace is not a manufactured emotional state or a self-help breathing exercise you can force upon yourself. It is a holy fruit that grows naturally when your life is deeply rooted in daily connection with the creator of the universe. I spent years relying on my own willpower to remain calm during chaotic corporate meetings, only to find myself exploding with rage the moment I got into my car. I kept questioning why my personal discipline failed me every single time, wondering if I was just fundamentally broken inside. But I finally discovered that I was trying to pour water from an empty well, relying on human effort instead of divine supply. When you allow the love of God to fully occupy your heart, the volatile opinions of this world instantly lose their weight. You no longer feel the desperate need to defend your ego because your true identity is already eternally secured in heaven. When you stand on top of a massive mountain with God, the angry shouting of critics in the valley below becomes completely silent. Suddenly, you become an unshakable force, remaining calm in the center of the storm and spreading kindness where others spread pain. Thank you so very much for watching this video today. And please, make sure to subscribe to the channel to join our growing community of faith.